Welcome to the video, guys. We got something here I and many other people have been saying for a few months now, relating to Boris Johnson, the things he has done in the past 8 months, and how similar they are to the things that this country rejected last year at the election. Of course, we are talking about the Corbynated chicken, his policies, and the merry band of lunatics that follow him, which were rejected by the British people. But it seems some of the things Boris has done since the election would actually make Jeremy Corbyn proud, which we have pointed out many times before. Now, I have always said political parties are two cheeks of the same arsehole, but in the sense of ignoring what the people of this country want and obviously lying to us, not replicating rejected policies that will cost us a fortune on top of the untold debt this year has already put on us all. Well, Douglas Murray and the Sun have picked up on Boris Johnson's very similar spending to the Corbynated chicken. It's that bad, we might have to start calling him Boris Corbyn at this rate. But as you can see, Douglas Murray's article in the Sun headlines is Boris Johnson basically Corbyn in disguise. Let's compare the policies. Sometimes you have to wonder who won the last general election. Of course, we all have memories of Jeremy Corbyn losing the December ballot, and the Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran still isn't our foreign secretary. So Corbyn must have lost, but to look at some doings of Boris Johnson's Tory government, there is reason to doubt it. Consider one of the stories that warned people off Labour at the last election. It was said that Jeremy Corbyn was planning an £83 billion tax robbery on the public, based on spending plans that would have taken the country back to 1970, which I do feel I have to say that is probably one of the lowest reasons why people actually didn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn. There's 1,000 other things that he has done much more heinous than planning to take their tax money. Let me tell you that. At the end of the day, politicians taking our tax money is kind of normal. But the things the Corbynated chicken has done, the people he supports and the shit that he does, especially relating to Brexit, at the end of the day, sealed the deal that he was never going to be the Prime Minister. It's got nothing to do with an £83 billion tax robbery. It's to do with him being a low-life terrorist supporting Marxist scumbag that no one in this country really likes, except for his rabid band of momentum lunatics, which is common knowledge at this point, and the election kind of proved that. Douglas Murray continues though, look at the cash the current government has been splashing around. Borrowing in the first quarter of this year was $128 billion, more than $100 billion above the same period last year, and actually more than the Corbynated chicken planned to borrow this year. Indeed, government spending since April has been the highest on record. No government has been on such a spending spree since World War II. Of course, these have been unusual months. No government in the world was well prepared for a pandemic like the one that came in from China earlier this year. There are a few easy answers in the era of COVID, but only in Britain is the answer to everything a left-wing one. Because you have to remember, Boris Johnson is a liberal. He's not really a conservative. Yes, he might be the leader of the Conservative Party and running a conservative government, but he himself has said he is a liberal feminist many times before. In the US, President Trump has been urging the American economy to get going again. He has encouraged people stateside to be brave and to boom again, for private business to roar back into action. Compare that with the UK, where the public has been so terrified into our homes that a quarter of us say we won't come out of lockdown, even after all the conditions for lifting it are met. It seems Eat Out to Help Out has helped restaurants to recover, but we need to be prized out of our homes every day of the week, not just Monday to Wednesday. It's the same on everything, even on our history and culture. Obviously, because Boris has been pretty piss poor with absolutely everything he's doing. At the start of the lockdown, he was being quite strong and saying we're going to do this and that, we're not going to cower down, and then all of a sudden he started cowering and we get the weak pussy that we find ourselves with now. When gangs of activists started tearing down statues around the world in June, other world leaders stood up to the mob. President Macron of France took an especially firm stance. The French Republic will not erase any trace or any name from its history, he said. It will not take down any statue, which has to be the first time in history that the French haven't capitulated at the first sign of trouble, and shows that Boris Johnson is rather piss poor if Macron can do that and he can't even bother to do it over here. But this is something we called out at the time with Boris Johnson's mealy-mouthed words in relation to the BLM bullshit that was going on. Compare that with this country, where a Conservative government sat quiet for days as hooligans assailed the cenotaph. Yes, they did. Boris Johnson sat there, gave mealy-mouthed words, and blamed apparently the far right, if you will all remember back. Boris Johnson stayed silent even as the statue of his personal hero, Winston Churchill, was boxed up for its own safety. No, he didn't. He actually released an article where he attacked Sadiq Khan for doing it, but also attacked people for wanting to defend it, calling them far right, as I said a moment ago. It is understandable in some ways. Our Prime Minister became very ill after contracting the coronavirus, but even that has produced left-wing nanny state answers, which obviously it has. You can see what we're living through now. now. As this article says, Jeremy Corbyn would be proud. Government started announcing plans to tackle obesity. Yep, we know this right here. What Corbyn offered us versus what Boris Johnson is giving us. Let's take a look. Spending. Estimated cost of the Corbynite manifesto was £1.2 trillion. Boris Johnson. Spending. Overseen biggest increase in public spending since World War II. So he's definitely matched the Corbynated chicken on that. Maybe not quite 1.2 trillion, but we still got a bit of time to go. Debt. Borrow more than 106 billion to meet election promises. Boris Johnson debt. Borrowed 128 billion in the first quarter of this year, so he's surpassed the Corbynated chicken there. Railways. Renationalised the entire network. Railways for Boris Johnson, nationalised with emergency legislation to suspend rail franchise system for 6 months and provide refunds to ticket holders. So, while not exactly the same, they are certainly looking very close to each other at this point. Wealth. Threatened to tax all inheritance above 125 grand. Boris Johnson wealth. A review of capital gains tax launched, raising the possibility rich will be targeted to plug budget black hole. Wages. Universal basic income to give every person a fixed sum to cover the basics, whether they are rich or poor, in work or jobless. Wages. The state is paying 80% of the wages of 9.6 million people from 1.2 million different employers this month under the furlough scheme running since April. So, not quite as bad as the Corbynated chickens one, but still pretty bad, though at the moment I would say some of that furlough is certainly needed. People are relying on it at the end of the day, but Boris shouldn't have fucked the economy if you asked me. NHS enshrined in law is the 39 billion increase in annual NHS spending by 2023 to 2024, plus an extra 6 billion over the next 4 years. Plans to cut corporation tax have been ditched, which obviously Jeremy Corbyn had there as increased health budget by 4.3%. So fairly similar when you look over them, that is for sure. Low paid raised minimum wage to £10 an hour within a year. National living wage is now at £8.72 an hour, so that's not the same, but they ain't far off. Corbyn's nanny state. Increased use of sin taxes and ban on junk food ads on TV before 9 p.m. Junk food ads banned on TV before 9 p.m. So just by looking at those few points there, you can see there are some striking similarities between what Corbyn offered us and what Boris Johnson has given us. Obviously, the situation that we're in now is not the same as it was back then, but you can only imagine the Corbynated chicken would be doing similar to Boris Johnson now, though probably a lot worse, let's be honest here. He was planning to spend all this money in normal times. Could you imagine what he would do with the situation we find ourselves in now? Instantly, the government started announcing campaigns to tackle obesity. Boris Johnson called on the public to get your weight down a bit and protect your health. And why did he do that? For the same reason every other order we are given. To protect the National Health Service. Because at this point it's a fucking religion, as we all know. Our NHS, who are in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Anyone slags you off, they'll be thrown in the gulag by the Conservatives or the Labour Party. It's fucking pathetic. There's a lot to be said for the health service, but it exists to protect the public. The public does not exist simply to protect the NHS, which is extremely well said, and that is the way it should be going. Of course, Boris Johnson said he needed to protect the NHS to get the beds up. It would take a few weeks. That was 5 odd months ago now. Of course, we will now see a slew of the usual campaigns, such as the one to ban pre-watershed advertising for junk food. I doubt even Corbyn's Labour Party at this stage would have been telling us what to eat. I don't know about that. They probably would have been bringing corn and bread round to your house, let's be honest here. They would have went full communist, I'm almost certain. You would have had Momentum delivering your food and probably meeting out Justice, let's be honest. On issue after issue, it is the same thing. There was a time when the Conservative Party favoured the privatisation of things such as the railway system. Today, we seem to be gearing up for a renationalisation of them. At the same time, there is a promise for an endless campaign to get everybody on bicycles, using public money to do so. Our city centres have become clogged traffic lanes and now have clear, empty cycle lanes, many which have popped up without consultation. In case after case, we are seeing policies that would have made Jezza proud, as I said earlier, like endless promises to raise wages of staff in the public sector. No doubts there are part of the sector that could do with a pay rise, but who is going to pay for that? What magic money tree does this Tory government expect to be able to shake? Probably the one that they've been shaking already, and the one the SNP believes is always there and they keep milking us for. Chancellor Rishi Sunak has made himself popular by his constant cash giveaway, but all the time the question grows, who is going to pay for this? Well, he's certainly not very popular with me because of these cash giveaways. I don't like them very much, but in a way, I kind of blame Boris Johnson for locking down the country when there are many other things he could have done, as we have seen in Sweden. I doubt Sunak will be popular once he starts to ask for the money back. No, of course he won't be. And Labour will jump on that like a bitch on heat and use it against him because he is quite prominent in the Tory party at the moment. They won't want the possibility of him coming forward and taking control in the future, which has been touted by many media organisations, though personally I doubt it myself. For decades, our politics have followed the same pattern. Labour governments come into a good economy and leave office with a wrecked one. This time, it is the Conservative government's turn to wreck the economy, which is actually something we have all pointed out before and said every time Labour get in, they destroy the economy for a few years, leave no money left. The Tories come in, they do austerity, Labour run around screaming about how bad they are because of it, and then eventually Labour Party end up back in government, and it's a vicious cycle. You might as well call it the circle of political life. It is a lot for voters to stomach. They might in unusual times, but only so long as this government doesn't look like on every other issue it is red all the way through. So far, this is what it looks like, and it needs to change. This country needs to roar again, not mew. We need to boom, not cower, and we need to encourage the private sector, not just endlessly praise the public one. Of course, these are exceptional times, but Boris Johnson must remember these key Tory instincts. Low taxes, incentive for business, and smaller government, which obviously we ain't getting now. Take a look at what the Tory government is doing with these nonsensical regulations that we are all living under. It certainly is not what I would call smaller government. If that is going to happen, a lot of things will need doing. But first is to leave the spectre of Jezza behind, not smuggle him into the centre in a Tory disguise. Well, I've got to say, for the most part, I certainly agree with what Douglas Murray is saying here. He is bang on the money, though, to be honest, it's kind of obvious for anyone to see. Boris Johnson has been weak as piss water, and as you can see by the evidence we have there, a lot of these policies are really looking like the ones that were rejected along with the Corbynated chicken. Now, of course, we have to give him some leeway because of the situation we find ourselves in, though of course, as I've said, it is partly his fault because he fucked up in the way that he dealt with it. In my opinion, there was no need to lock down. You should have locked down the borders, which obviously we've seen over the last few months they really can't do, but they could have at least tried to do that from the beginning, kept the national economy going, and we might have been in a bit of a better position than we currently are now, but hindsight is 2020 and I'm not in charge.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.